Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Mr. Fortier, how are you? Hopefully dry and inside. Apparently it's monsooning out.
I am driving home and from practice right now, and it is indeed a monsoon. Like, I asked Ant, like when he called me, like, can you hear me okay? Because it's pretty loud in my car from all these raindrops.
Yeah, like I'm asking you, this is your friend, and I'm serious, and feel free to be like, no, I should probably like not drive and talk. Are you good to actually do this?
Yeah. My AirPods are in and my two hands are on the wheel. I could pass driver's ed right now.
Excellent. Okay, good. I hope that's always the case, that whenever you're behind the wheel, you could pass driver's ed, that incredibly high bar of passing driver's ed. Actually, it's probably better than we all drive when we're not having a driving instructor next to us. Anyway, the point is, Sam, they played a preseason game on Friday. Biggest takeaway from the game, there was a lot there for a lot of different guys up and down the roster, but like when you sat down to write Friday, what's the thing that was most intriguing to you?
Shockingly, it was the quarterback. Because
No
Sam
way!
Sam Howell is obviously the biggest question mark on this team. He's the most important question mark. It's the most important position, yada, yada, yada. So for me, the biggest thing was that he looked pretty crisp. The sack was obviously on him. But, you know, if you go back and look at it, I think that he played pretty well. He processed rather quickly. He got the ball out rather quickly. He created off schedule, particularly on that fourth down when he got flushed out of the pocket and found Cole Turner for the first down. Like, there were a lot of things to like from that game. I'm far from christening him as the guy or anything like that, but I thought it was a really good first step, particularly in this new offense.
Sam Fortier, Washington Post, with us here on the Hoffman Show. So to me, what stood out was like, oh, there's solutions in this offense. And I think you see some of the short stuff. You see, obviously, the big play to Jahan. Like, when you took a deeper look, one of the things that we always talked about with some of the previous quarterbacks here was not taking some of those bigger opportunities. Sam was efficient, Sam, I guess, went 9 of 12. The 3 incompletions you can all chalk up to either drops or batted balls, etc. But, like, did he actually get the most out of the offense?
Well, I actually would go back and say that I thought one of his incompletions was, like, one of his best throws. Obviously, the throw to Jahan, everyone sticks out in their mind, but, like, right before the Andrew Wylie hold in the end zone, like, he feels pressure, he gets out, and he just throws the ball away, you know, basically punts to live another down. And, like, I was really impressed by his internal clock to say, okay, like, I got to get rid of this thing. I got to keep us out of bad situations. And obviously the safety ends up happening, and he doesn't do it on the sack. But that moment when you're backed up, I was like, oh, like, this dude, yeah, there are solutions in the offense like everything else, but I was just very impressed by his feel for the game in that moment.
As was I. And I thought, too, his scrambling ability, not just the obvious of, like, yeah, he picks up first down with his legs, but when he got out the back of the pocket, Logan made a really interesting comparison to Russell Wilson and the way he used to escape the pocket. Like, for a smaller quarterback, I thought that was great because if you step up into the pocket, you just step up into a wall of human beings and you can't see over them, and that doesn't actually help versus a guy like Brissett who can still see over at 6'4". So I actually thought, like, even the mobility, it's going to look a little different than some of the more traditional stuff and step up in the pocket and kind of the old school mentality. But I thought the mobility, like, really, really showed how he elevates the ceiling of this offense as well.
And I would also say dramatically raises the floor because he avoided some sacks. And I think that the way that he's going to be able to put himself in a better position to throw the ball out of bounds or to get the ball away or to give this guy a chance, like, I thought those were all impressive things, and you know, kind of like you said, like, it's going to look different. I think he rolls to his left much better than quarterbacks we've seen here in the past, and part of that is the arm strength because he can still hit those throws even when he's not able to really put his body or his hips into it. But, like, you know, when he rolls left, I think that's also pretty impressive, and we didn't see that a ton in the preseason game, but in practice it certainly stood out.
Definitely. Sam Fortier with us, Washington Post, here on the Hoffman Show, Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming on YouTube at the Team 980. So the other big talking point, the other Achilles heel, and in this case, potentially, depending on how you want to look at it, a bugaboo, is the offensive line. Those first 2 drives undone by Wylie penalties. But what did you make of the line play as a whole? And what was kind of the vibe from Rivera and company about how fixable the problems are?
Yeah, I think that like Logan, I don't know if you've already mentioned this or talked to him about it, but I think that when you go back and look at it, the problems are problems. Like Charles Leno had a couple of snaps that you didn't love. Wylie had obviously the huge, the big penalties. But other than that, I thought the interior looked pretty good. I thought Sam Cosmi had some absolutely baller reps against Darius Smith, the best Browns pass rusher on the field at the time, because there's no Myles Garrett. I thought Nick Gates, complimented both of them pretty well. Chris Paul, you would have liked to see him be more aggressive, but he put himself in position to help to be aggressive. And so if he can be more consistent, if he can fire those hands out a little bit stronger, I think you're looking at a pretty good left guard situation, because I think this is more than anybody could have expected from Chris Paul as a 7th-round pick who played one game last year.
Anybody from down the roster that you think is worth noting, like a guy who all of a sudden may have helped his stock one way or the other before we get into practice over the last couple of days?
Would you count Christian Sip Holmes as a guy that's down the roster and needs to help himself?
I would. I think he was probably on the line given the nature of he was a 7th-round pick last year, and they've got a ton of good corners, and I definitely think he helped himself. So he checks all the boxes for me.
Yeah, and I think really the physicality at the catch point and him knocking out some passes just because of his physicality, I thought that was pretty impressive. Mitchell Tinsley is another guy I think who helped himself, getting a little bit of buzz here coming out of the first preseason game, the receiver. I think that, those are two guys that I'm going to be looking forward to watching, coming up. I guess the second preseason game is until Monday, so not that soon, but it's certainly in joint practice as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you probably agree with me that the joint practices are actually more interesting and more valuable than the next preseason game.
I know a lot of people have that take, and I get it, but I still think that there's something about games that just mean a little bit more going at 100%. Because I think that even though it's joint practice and you're going to want to, and I understand the injury prevention element of it, I think they're valuable. And smarter football people than me say that they're more interested in them, like Ron Rivera. But I don't know. I think games still, for me, carry a little bit of extra weight.
So here, I'm not claiming to be, just for the record, I'm not claiming to be a smarter football person than you. I'm just going to make the argument as the person that I am, which is to say, I think because people pull back so much schematically in preseason games that even though they're not live tackling, even though there's not adrenaline, and I do think there's something to that, just kind of the gamer mentality of certain players, there's so much you can ascertain from a joint practice because you are actually putting it all out there. They're going to have periods that are basically live, and Bieniemy's going to call plays, and the DC, the Ravens, is going to call their plays, and they're going to line up and they're going to play football. And that ones-on-ones with everybody out there, not worried about, hey, this is going to be on TV and the Cardinals might be watching. I think that is why I would be amongst the group to say joint practices are more valuable, and you can also get a bunch of situational work in that might not come up in the preseason, but is absolutely going to be valuable to you during the regular season.
Oh, don't get it twisted. I think that joint practices are valuable for all of the reasons you just laid out, and I think that I think it's going to be very useful for Eric Bieniemy and the coaches and then the players as well. But for me, I think the thing that I'm thinking of here is, if Christian Holmes goes out and plays really well or really poorly against the Ravens, I am not going to read into it as much probably as, if he's doing it in the game or something like that. I mean, it'll certainly be notable. It'll be important. But I think that the game element is something that obviously I'm stuck on.
Yeah, no, and you know what? It actually raises an interesting point. I wonder if there is kind of a line of demarcation on the roster that, for player 38 and down, the game is more important, and players 37 and up, and this is completely a made-up number, and it would obviously depend on the team and how they rotate guys and whatever, but for guys that are, on the roster, going to play on offense and defense, the practices are more valuable to prepare for the season, but you start talking about the more fringe guys, the game is more valuable to show what they can do and make the roster in the first place.
Yes, I think that you and I have come to some sort of compromise or agreement or a nuanced discussion, which is definitely, the radio is not a place for that. So I'm a little surprised, and I
you watch your mouth.
There.
You watch your mouth on this here nuanced, highfalutin radio show. That does a lot of dumb stuff on regular occasion. It's the Hoffman Show. That's us on the Team 980, always live as well in the free Odyssey app. Sam Fortier with us, of course, Washington Post Commanders beat reporter. Last game thing, because his name hasn't come up yet, and I'm curious what kind of the rumblings were around Ashburn over the past couple days. Quan Martin obviously had a rough one. There's no way around it. It doesn't mean that he's a bad player and he's a bust. He had some very specific things that he had to work on, and also, frankly, I think was the victim of a bad call on the second DPI, but, there's enough there. The refs call it. What's the vibe on Quan Martin after he gives up the touchdown and has the other penalty Friday night?
I'm absolutely stunned that question did not end with Chase Young. Like, what's the buzz around Ashburn because this guy's got a stinger and he didn't practice today? And that's
we'll get there. We'll get there.
Him and Sam Howell and Terry McLaurin are the people we talk about most. But, yeah, I mean, Quan Martin, it's funny. I talked to him yesterday because somebody did a screen grab of his Twitter likes right after the game, and I guess Quan Martin went into the locker room and just liked every tweet that was Quan Martin sucks, Quan Martin is a bust, and on and on and on. And I went up to him and I was like, why'd you do that? And he was just trying to motivate myself. Remember that when you suck, people are going to call you out. And so I think that Quan Martin is very excited for joint practices, for a game. Whatever he can do to show people that he deserves to be a second-round pick is the way that he put it to me. He's going to be excited to go out and show that.
All right. That brings us to practice and kind of the latest. And here's your softball, Sam. What is the latest on Chase Young, and will he practice in Baltimore?
Yeah, I think that we expect him to. Ron Rivera said that it was a self-reported stinger that took him out after 4 snaps of the preseason game, and I think that today it was a little different. I think not seeing him out there, particularly after Sam Cosmi goes down, goes into the tent, gets his knee wrapped, comes back out, for one-on-one reps. But Chase, they want to be extra cautious with him, obviously because of the knee, and he's going to be back out there when they think he's ready. I would expect him to be on the field for joint practices. They obviously want to ramp him up. The bigger concern for me, honestly, and I'm going to do a nice little pivot here, is Logan Thomas.
Yeah.
Logan Thomas. We haven't seen him in 2 weeks. He hasn't been outside even. We haven't seen him on the side field, and that's a calf injury where I get you want to be careful with that. Jahan had the hamstring last year, and they tried to bring him back just before he was ready, and then he re-aggravated it, and he missed 5 weeks. So I get the context of why you would want to bring Logan back slowly, especially an older guy, because you're probably thinking, hey, this guy doesn't need as many preseason reps. We just need him for Arizona. But, your number one tight end in an offense that uses tight ends a lot, not having practiced in 2 weeks, I'm going to raise my hand and say that's a red flag.
Yeah, no, I think we're getting to that point where you don't get the benefit of the doubt anymore of they say it's no big thing. What's funny is I was trying to think of examples over the last couple of years with Rivera where they've kind of gone down this road. And the example is Curtis Samuel and Curtis Samuel. And 2 years ago, they said Curtis Samuel, it's not that big of a deal. And then it was a very, very, very big deal. And then last year, when they started to ramp him up and he'd miss a couple days or miss a day here, they'd vet day him here. They're like, we promise it's not a big deal. And he was healthy the entire year. If you had to give your best guess, Logan Thomas week 1, where are we on the Curtis Samuel scale?
Well, the thing about 2021 Curtis Samuel is that Ron Rivera, without saying it, tacit omission, did not reveal that Curtis Samuel had core surgery over the summer.
Right.
And that's why he wasn't practicing. That's why it took so long. And so if Logan Thomas had secretly had surgery in the last 2 weeks, I would say then the odds are low. But I don't want anyone to misconstrue that. I don't think that happened. There's no reason to suspect that has happened. But I do think it's different than 2021 Curtis Samuel is what I'm trying to say. And so for me, I still think the odds are decent. I certainly would not say 100%. I wouldn't say 0% either. It's probably somewhere in the middle. A little bit better than a coin flip is probably where my gut says Logan Thomas is at right now.
If he is out, do they have enough at tight end, or is this one of those where every once in a while here, every year, the fan base loses its mind about a position in the offseason, and then in the regular season, it's wow, looks like the groupthink was right. And, a lot of times it happens exactly like this, where the reason the team is more confident than, say, the fan base is they're relying on one guy who they think is good. And if Logan Thomas is out there and good, they don't have a problem at tight end. If he's not, where are they at tight end?
This is where the Armani Rogers injury, I think, looms very large because the way he was developing really made you confident about this group. Now, if you lose Logan too, you're down to two of your top guys in John Bates and Cole Turner, who obviously have different skill sets. I don't think either of them are complete yet, although I will say Turner had a nice block in the preseason game, which is not necessarily his game, the former wide receiver. But I think the third tight end, if you do that, is Alex Arma, maybe. I mean, the fullback who can do a lot of different things, I think they'd like him a lot. But, I mean, unless I'm forgetting someone, Craig, those are your top three tight ends if Logan is out.
Well, that gets to a question that we have been asking on the show and that I will tackle again next is when we do our 53-man roster projection update, which is, do you go Curtis Hodges, who has a ton of potential and has flashed at times and the upside seems extraordinarily high, or do you go with Arma, who seems to fit a need in this Bieniemy offense because they definitely have been running a ton of fullback stuff?
Yeah, I personally would go with Arma, which is why I said him third, because, I mean, Curtis Hodges, for sure, I know he's a good route runner. I know he has athletic potential, but the hands have been too inconsistent for me in camp. I want to say Bieniemy once or twice has said, like, I'm sick of the drops after a Curtis Hodges drops. Like, he's not saying it specifically to Curtis Hodges, but, like, the Hodges drop is the thing that puts him over the edge. And so to me, I think there's a lot of potential there, but we need to see more to increase his floor, I think, to keep him on the initial 53 rather than saying, hey, we like this guy, but there's enough questions there where, we're going to go with a different guy who blocks and does a lot of things that we really like in this offense as opposed to more of a project.
Sam Fortier with us from the Washington Post here on the Team 980. All right, quickly, Sam, last bucket of topics here, joint practices. First of all, what should we expect? I'm excited to get up there tomorrow. It's going to be 2 really intense days. We know that. But we've talked so much about kind of the practice structure with Bieniemy coming in. What do we expect with the Commanders going to Baltimore and how these practices are going to look?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see that as well. Who is picking which practice structure? How, are they going to do a lot of third down situational stuff like the Commanders have been doing? Are they going to do more general stuff to get in reps of 11 on 11, things like that? Are they going to do one-on-ones? Fans are going to be out there, so I don't know I don't think that'll influence it at all, but I'm curious to see kind of what approach they take. And I'm a little curious to see how Eric Bieniemy handles it, because if you remember when the referees were out, he had no problem getting on the referees. So I'm very curious to see how he interacts with the Ravens players and coaches as well.
Yeah, typically the offense tends to dictate these kinds of things. So I wonder how different the two fields look, where the Ravens offense is on one getting whatever they do done, and Eric Bieniemy is just yelling at everybody on the other field. So that could be really fun to watch and see and how they split it up. Obviously, any particular players matchup stylistically that you're really looking forward to? They've been playing the same guy, a Montez Sweat versus Andrew Wylie. Now they're going to go against different competition. Someone that you're really looking to prove, that they've actually made a jump, or that maybe they've just been in a bad matchup against their teammate. Who are the guys that you really have your eye on?
Offensive line. They did not. I think that they would tell you they wanted to play even better. I know we talked about the concerns, and maybe it's a little bit overblown, but I do think there's some stuff there. And Andrew Wylie, for sure, I know they go against a really good front in practice, maybe a top 5 front in football. I think the Ravens are good, but not quite as good. So I'm curious to see how they perform in this sort of setting, because I think that the Commanders also are interested. They're going to evaluate their guys. Where is our line at? Is the interior able to continue playing well? Can Charles Leno kind of, smooth out a couple of problems that he had? And can Andrew Wylie fix the mechanical flaw, the oversetting that allowed him to leave that soft inside shoulder open for, Zadarius Smith to run through 3 or 4 times and get pressure on Sam Howell. So that is the unit I am most interested in watching. And if I can do a shameless plug here, I have a little bit of a project on that unit dropping tomorrow morning.
Excellent. You can read that at WashingtonPost.com/sports. And now, Sam, we get to do my favorite thing, where I drop breaking news on you. Don't worry, though. You don't have to write this. This is not Commanders breaking news, just NFL breaking news. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Zach Martin has agreed to a restructured deal with the Cowboys. He is going to now be reporting to camp. He gets $8.5 million more, I believe, spread out over the next 2 years. Both years are fully guaranteed. So that's number one. I have 2 for you.
Okay, the second one I think I already know.
What? Guess. Go for it.
Ezekiel Elliott signing with the Patriots. Is that what you're gonna say?
There you go. Hey! Guess the breaking news. Yes, he announced on social media that he's signing with the Patriots. So there's that, which is nice, I guess. Zeke and the Patriots seems like a funky fit.
It does. I'm actually really excited that Zach Martin is back with the Cowboys because I love watching those battles with Duron and John Allen inside. Like, that's football at its best in the trenches, and so it's great news, I think, for fans of football to see Zach Martin back in Dallas. Although, obviously, if you're a Commanders fan, I get why that would not be as exciting.
Right. If you just want an easy win, you would like Zach Martin not to be on the field because he's very, very good. And they're some of the numbers that they would put up on occasion, like as they're talking about him and the contract stuff, they're not good without him. But alas. And by the way, last thing, like for real on the web, did you watch the Manziel thing?
I did not. I saw the clips on Twitter, especially of his agent, who I've seen at the combine and things like that. And
yeah,
it's funny, man. That stuff is funny.
It's very good. Two, I forgot, which is bad because I was working in Dallas at the time. Zach Martin is who the Cowboys took instead of Johnny Manziel.
Wow, what an absolute win for them. I also forgot that.
Yeah, I was reminded of that, and I was like, oh, right, they took the Hall of Fame left guard. Good job, Will McClay, who's the guy who's actually like the brains of the operation down there. Anyway, that's Sam Fortier, boys and girls, here with us on the Hoffman Show. See you tomorrow in Baltimore, my friend.
Of course. Thanks for having me as always, man.
You got it. Sam Fortier, read his work. And again, he's got a project dropping tomorrow morning, WashingtonPost.com/sports. Or just open up your newspaper when they throw it at you in the morning at your front porch or however you get your newspaper.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.